Hello, this is Lon Silver, and if you hear any background sounds, ignore them. I have a weird setup, and if the mic's moving, sorry about that. It's just a weird setup. So probably next week it'll be a little better since I'll be in a less cluttered space. So, let's get into it. The vent led to a kitchen, which was kind of messy and felt cluttered or empty, like someone was supposed to be here, but isn't, like they disappeared or died. But I ignore it and keep walking and looking around. I then see a porcelain child playing with food as if it didn't know what to do with it. I then notice a large ladle and whispered to Mono, "Take the ladle and destroy the porcelain child." Should I continue? Yeah, let's continue. He nods and goes over the table thing and grabbed the ladle and dragged it over to the porcelain child to hit it. The porcelain child then turned around and tried to pounce on Mono, but Mono hit it. I then take out a metal pipe and come over to see a porcelain child that was on the stove jump down and try to attack Mono, but I intercepted it and killed it. The next two porcelain children came out of nowhere, and Mono and I unintentionally decapitated them. But they both had an eye out. We ignored it for now and tried to continue on before we noticed the next room was filled with porcelain children. We were able to defeat 4 back-to-back together, but at least 30 or even more was out there, and we could never take on that many. We went back and talked about how we should go over, and it seemed impossible, but then Mono said, "How about we disguise ourselves as them and sneak through?" I agree, and we take the heads and put them over our heads. I noticed Mono faced away as he put on the head, and this is the first time I saw his hair. It was black and a wavy type of hair that I think covered his face, like mine. But I then put in on mine and we walked through. They were everywhere and were loud and even breaking things. And then I saw a bowl fly in the air and just keep walking. I then get pushed by one of them and almost let go of the head, but then Mono helped me and kind of stared at the kid as if he wanted to strangle it, but I grabbed his hand and kept walking. There was then a dead end and was blocked by a bench with porcelain children. I decided to go under the table and crawl out before Mono grabs me and a large pot dropped that would have cracked my skull. I hugged Mono and we went out the door. Sorry, forgot to show those. Okay. There were more porcelain children running around and being crazy. Some of them were bullying each other, others were playing, some were fighting each other and even killing each other. It was unnerving. Oh shit. Okay, I almost needed to sneeze. Okay. We then get to the end of the hall and we go through a large plank and we try to squish in, but the heads break and we fall to the ground. I look around and it looks like we're in a science type of room thing with human parts with liquid in jars or something. I look up to see a button, but both of us can't get up there, and we climb up and push down a brain and it breaks, and Mono, unbothered, throws it at the button and opens the door. I'm disgusted as the brain makes a squishing noise on the floor, which just makes me squirm a bit. We then walk into a room with a doorway with a light, and there's this mouse hole, and I point to it, and Mono nods, and we go in. We see the teacher thing walking around, and she grabs a knife and walks away into the different side of the small room. We run under the small cabinet, and she looks around like she knows we're there, but then goes into a different room, which gives us both a mini heart attacks. And we follow, being out of sight. We walk into another room and see sort of dissection. Do correct me if I'm wrong, I'm sorry. Dissecting room with organs and jars. Mono notices a small opening on the other side of the room, and he says, and it's a vent of some sort that could lead us closer to 6. We go on the table and see it placing organs in a dummy, which freaks out Mono a bit and makes him shake a bit, which I try to help by holding his hand and patting his head. He nods slowly, and I lead him across the table, making sure she walks around and she doesn't see us jump across the table. And we hide behind some jars, and she looks directly at us. And I could feel Mono's gripping onto my arm as she looks away. Did she see us? Oh, thank God. Sorry for the background noise. We continue to move. Sorry, I don't have any more pictures, so you're going to be staying on this one for a while. Sorry. We continue to move on the end, and I let Mono go first. When I jump into the opening, I land on the ground, and we see a vent and climb up a bookshelf and climb into the vent. We then go down and end up in a hallway and see a porcelain child drawing an eye on the floor with chalk, and see a hammer with a sort of dunce head over. And I say to Mono, "You take the hammer." He then nods, and we walk over to the child, but then steps on a loose floorboard, and I grab him and pull him back, which I trip on something, and we fall, and a bucket comes flying over our heads, going up and smashing the child's head, but which notifies the other child, and I grab the hammer and attack the child and killing it. But then another one comes out, and Mono takes the hammer and kills that one too. I say, "Thanks, Mono." He then says, "No problem. You've saved me, so you can say this is a thank you, 9. I could tell he's smiling, and I smile at him, and he nods and takes the lead as we walk into a hall that is filled wall to wall with lockers, and a porcelain child falls from one of the lockers on the corner and attacks Mono and takes the lead and destroys it. I look behind and grab a small knife and pin the child to the ground and stab it in the eye, and it starts to crack, and its arm trying to grab at me, but it then splits. I look over to Mono, and he puts up a thumbs up, and I nod and smile. We continue to walk, and the locker behind us opens and punch, and it loses its balance. I then stomp and smash on its head. I then realized Mono took down another one, and I gave him a pat on the head, and I can tell he's happy by his eyes. And we walk to a room, but then a bucket goes by and almost hits us, and look up and see 6 hanging from the ceiling. It was a sort of bathroom, and a rope around her ankles, and we see a porcelain children guarding her. I then say to Mono, "You take on the porcelain children, and I'll cut the rope." and when I do, I need you to catch her." He nods and runs in and starts to attack the porcelain children. I run to the plank and held up 6, and I look over to Mono, and he was done shortly, and nodded. I cut the rope, and she fell into Mono's arms. Well, sort of. They both fell. And hugged him, and came over and hugged me too. I say, "I'm so sorry we didn't come sooner." She said it was okay, and we went to the window to the other building, to maybe just a different building in the school. I honestly couldn't tell. We come across a plank thing to get there, and we go into a room with a piano, and 6 notices a lever and goes over and starts to turn it and drops it, and it's halfway through the floor. We decide to jump on it to get to the floor below. We jumped on it, and if we fell through, and I quickly held their hands so no one would get hurt. We all jumped down and looked around as Mono went to the right of us, and me and 6 went to the left of us. Mono then runs over and taps us and says, "That door's locked, right?" We nod and say, "There's a porcelain child dissecting a frog with a key, and I think it's the one for the door that opens to this door. So if one of you could help me and to the other side, and you guys make a distraction on the piano or something that makes noise." We nod, and 6 and I quickly lift him and gets him to the other side. We wait a bit before going over to the piano and basically dancing on the keys and kinda doing a tap dance together, which was actually pretty fun. I looked over to see a porcelain child and Mono mentioning that Mono mentioned trying to get through the door, but then Mono whacks them with a hammer and kills the child. Well, porcelain child. Me and 6 run over and lift the door, and we run to the locked door and unlock it to see a porcelain child drawing with chalk, and 6 seemed off and walked over, sneaking behind it, and then strangling it, and then looking over to me with realization for what she did. She was about to say something, and I say, "Great job, 6. I smiled at her, and the little fear in her eyes slowly faded away in relief. Mona then chimes in and says, "Yeah, good job, 6. She thanked us both, and we continue to go over a dresser thing and make it into a short hallway with lockers to the left of us, and goes to a staircase, and we all hear a piano being played, and stopping after a while, but then continuing, getting used to the sound. We then go up and see weird steps that go on top of the cabinet thing. We all climb up and open the vent. We then go in and end up in a room where the music was coming from. We then see the teacher was the one who's playing the piano, which gave us all a shiver down our spines. And I look down to see a lever that connects to the bridge. And I whisper, "I'm going down, and I'll let down the bridge in front of us, and I will find a way to get back up. But you both will go to the ledge and wait for me, and be safe." They nod slowly, and before I go, they both hug me and whisper for me to be safe, which I gave a smile to them both before going down. I went down and ran to the lever that I was about to crank before she stopped, and I immediately stopped and continued, which gave me a mini heart attack. I then cranked the lever all the way down, and they jumped on it, waiting for me, and I looked to see I can't get back up, and kind of panicking, looking around before I saw a rolly stool. I slowly dragged it on to the spot, and she stopped playing, which kind of made me stop since the stool kind of made a noise that would notify her of my location, and I finally get there and run across the bridge and jump into the vent. and we open the vent, and then we all hear a scream. Her head starts to come near us, and we both push, and I push them both in, but then struggle and see to get her head in, which gave Mono enough time to push the object covering the vent and crouch as fast as we could, as she's right behind me, and I see Mono and Six holding out their hand to pull me all fall back, sliding down into a crate. I hear her neck cracking and moving, looking around for us, and then retracting. I'm breathing hard, and I notice it's raining, but only on my face, and I notice Six and Mono on me, and I move them a bit, and then get an apology for being on me. I then say thank you for saving me, and they say no worries, and we take a breath and try to relax a bit before getting up and walking around. We then see a big ravine where there's a little bridge for us, and I take a lead as we all cross the bridge. We then keep walking, and Six is starting to shiver, and I keep her by my side, trying to warm her up, and we go over to a garbage bin thing and do a bit of parkour, and we go through an alley and make it through the door, and we see a yellow raincoat, and Six then looks at it and walks away and then puts it on as it meant a lot to her, and somehow lost it. She smiled and put on the raincoat, and I said, "At least you're warm," and she hummed in response in a happy tone, and I smile at her as we continue to be continued. Sorry, it was I speeded though, because my brother doesn't respect that I'm doing a video. So yes, this is Lemon Silver, and goodbye. Sorry if it's a little bit short.